Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you joining us from different parts of the world to this exclusive virtual panel discussion on moving the needle in the right direction, a practical and measurable approach to creating a gender balanced workplace that we have put together especially for all of you as we are all set to celebrate International Women's Day. Organizations around the world understand the need for diversity and are putting in efforts to create a more inclusive workplace. However, programs designed to increase diversity and inclusion in the workplace often fail. For example, most organizations still struggle with unconscious biases interfering with recruitment decision making, even those with the most sophisticated recruitment technologies in place. We recently launched our very first Women at Work Survey 2021, a DNI benchmarking study, and found that the greatest barrier as to why the DNI efforts aren't working contributes to the general attitude of indifference, a sense that the workforce is sufficiently diverse, insufficient mentoring for non traditional employees. You can find the link in our comment section to fill this survey. We will launch the final report on 31st of March. So we've never been smarter, more analytical, more innovative, and more woke than we are now. But we're still thinking about how to start moving the needle rather than taking action to put it in the right direction. Today's session is curated to brainstorm the outcome-based actions that you will take today to accelerate the movement of the gender equality needle. It is time to move beyond lip service and work on results-driven strides in the right direction. The future is all about balance. And to lead the conversation today, we have Esther Martinez, CEO and Editor-in-Chief, People Matters, along with our special panelists, Karine Roland, People and Culture Leader, APAC Manpower Group, Maria Tixidor, CEO, Buka Solutions, and Shraddhanjali Rao, Head HR, SAP India. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This is indeed an awesome lineup of some exceptional women leaders today. So looking forward to having a great discussion. Now, may I please invite Esther to kickstart the session. Over to you, Esther.
Thank you so much, Jasmine, and a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you with a topic that I think is very dear to the panelists, for sure, and to many of you who are joining us from around the world. And we'd love to hear where are you joining from. So inviting you, if you're joining us from LinkedIn, you have the LinkedIn chat, you're joining us from YouTube, whichever channel you're joining, just let us know, just your name and which city are you joining us from, so we get a little sense about the diversity of the group as well before we start. Great, so we're going to cover 5 areas today, and we have lots to cover. And we want to make sure that we make this as impactful and as meaningful as possible to all of you. So as we go through the 5 areas that I'm going to just pause in a minute, inviting you as well to pose your suggestions, your thinking, your impressions and questions, and we're going to be taking them as we go through the session today. So we're going to cover about why is it so difficult, and Yasmin was talking about the DNI programs don't deliver. Why is it so difficult? We're going to spend a little bit of time thinking about that. The second thing we're going to cover is some of the barriers that we have to remove. And what are those barriers and how can we remove them? So that's going to be the second area. And then the third and fourth and fifth is interconnected. This trio we have to focus on. The first one, really about the fish in the fish tank. And I like this. I heard Maria talking about this in another session. So I'm taking that metaphor. We have to work with the men, and we have to work with the woman, right? So we're going to spend a little bit of time about the men's role in this change. And we're going to talk about the woman's role in this change. And we are also going to talk about the fish tank. What do we need to do to make this fish tank more inclusive? So a lot to cover, and I can see many of you joining from all over the world. So we have some very early risers in the US, or maybe just not yet gone to sleep. We have people in India, we have people from Singapore, and it's just so amazing to welcome you all. All right, very quickly, let me introduce you our panelists. We have Maria joining us from Barcelona, entrepreneur and lawyer. Maria has developed her career in the field of advising businesses, foundations, and associations. She was and is the first woman in the history of Football Club Barcelona to have held the position of secretary of the board of directors, and she has played a very, very critical part in developing women football section. And she's been recognized for taking the Barça Femení team to a new heights with her work. So a very warm welcome, Maria.
Thank you very much, Esther, and good morning from Barcelona.
Good morning, and very early morning for you, but still, thank you so much for giving us your time to be here today.
Thanks to you, Esther. Very, very happy to have this conversation with you.
Wonderful. Welcome. We have Karim joining us from Australia, a seasoned HR and talent management professional with a lot of exposure in multicultural, diverse environments and complex organizations. She has demonstrated experience in implementing large change initiatives and HR transformation, responsible for driving capability, organizational development strategy for 12 countries in Asia Pacific and Middle East. And she's also an advisory board member of Monash University. Very warm welcome, Karim. Good afternoon, good evening for you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Very happy to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Karim. And we have joining us from Bangalore, Shraddhanjali Rao, Head HR, SAP, India partner to the business and promoter of talent and technology. Shraddha is an HR leader with extensive experience in developing and executing HR strategy and building high-performance organizations across geographies. She's recognized and respected for being one of the strong voices of HR and talent at the executive table. And she's also the co-author of one book that I invite you all to read if you're interested in really this topic, which is why blend in when you can stand out, the what, why, and how of making corporates more inclusive places to work. So a very warm welcome, Shraddha.
Thank you so much, Esther, and looking forward to it. Super excited.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're going to get started just with the first topic. So we spoke about, and Yasmin said the context so beautiful, talking about the D&I programs don't deliver. And it frustrates many of us who are working in this field, passionate about this field. We know there is commitment from business perspective. Everyone seems to agree that there is a business ROI, but yet we are not able to move the needle. So the first question, Maria, is to you. Why those programs don't deliver? What have we learned from the past?
Well, let me talk about the fish tank then. I think we are in the middle of a global shift where we are becoming aware and every time more aware of the fact that companies are in societies and play a role which is not only to deliver benefits to their shareholders. They are a very special piece of the construction, the building of the society we live in. So as organizations that are embedded in this context, they need to be aware of what this context is telling them. And the global shift we're living in, which is very linked to the Me Too movement, very linked to the ecological claims, very linked to some global claim against so much inequalities in the world, is telling us we need to make something more than just provide benefits for our shareholders. We need to be this space that is really working together to achieve these SDGs that United Nations has set as goals for the whole of humanity. So one of the points that have been stated in these SDGs is gender equality is the basis for everything. We need to bring, this is not an issue of diversity, if I may say so. This is about 51% of the world population. So we are not the diversity. Who is calling who diverse? So we need to provide for everyone. And this means providing for women. And then on top of that, we need to acknowledge that diversity that is going to be both in the men's side and the women's side and means lots of things is something we need to embrace. It's something that we need to move from the sometimes social responsibility area of the company to the core of the strategy, just to get as much as we can from all the talent that is gathered in a company. And then learn how to make business that is meaningful, that has purpose, and that reaches all those goals that we have. And I think this applies to any organization. So from home to the biggest multinational in the world, that's the fish tank.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maria. And I love that you've taken us to the 10,000 feet of the societal context, to the 1 meter, which is our own home as an organization itself, right? Of group of people who are trying to figure out how to take a mission forward, which is whatever the family mission. So thank you so much for that, Maria. Anything to add, Karina or Shraddha? I'm going to come to you now with what comes on the way, really, to see what Maria is talking in our organizations. Shraddha, what are those barriers? Why is it so difficult to really make that shift? That seems so obvious when we hear Maria, right? What are the practical barriers within the organization? And what are your experiences of how we can break those barriers?
Happy to answer that. Always happy to share our learnings in the practical journey. So let me call out 5 that I've seen over the last decade. And my heart goes out to everybody who's truly passionate about diversity and inclusion, but are unable to move the needle. Let's start with the first one. I think Maria talked a little bit about it. The whole business case of diversity and inclusion had started with a CSR flavor to it. It moved on to business value amongst the top leadership. But we have not managed to cascade the story of ROI into a meaningful conversation. So, a very clear example here is we still try to convince leaders based on, if I hire diversely, I will be able to retain them better. There will be a better. You haven't taken that equation to innovation, which is where the multitude of diversity and inclusion will, that's where your curve goes out of the graph. And that's where we need to focus. That's one on ROI. The second one, we believe to a very large extent that D&I is the prerogative of HR and the top leader or the CXOs in the organization. Your linchpin is your mid-management and your first level management. As an organization, we have not, and as professionals, we have not invested enough. And that's where our weakest link is, because our employees experience diversity and inclusion in their everyday matters, not the day you celebrate Women's Day or Men's Day. It's their everyday experiences, and we have to strengthen the investment goes into leadership at all levels. The third one, and this one a little bit my heart goes out, is in the enthusiasm to make an inclusive organization, we copy paste best practice, right? We do not do enough due diligence. I get excited, and there are HR folks on this call. I know you get excited when you hear about practices. Before you take it back to your organization, spend time to understand what is the problem. The problem may be the same. Retention of women in mid-management career could be same across 2 industries, but you have to peel that onion a little bit. I think that is a due diligence we need to do as professionals, we need to do as leaders before we adopt practices. And that is what is going to make it truly sticking for the long run. The fourth one is our view of tracking practices is very, very backward looking. So we basically measure how we land at the end of the year, right? It's almost like a pass and a fail. I don't know how you felt when you got your report cards, and maybe you were better students than I was. It's not a very enjoyable experience because you don't know where you're landing. And that's where I'm really urging people to look at lagging indicators, leading indicators, and not just lagging indicators. You need to have milestones where you will measure progress in behavior and not just the end outcome. And the last one is D&I has to have a more cross-functional team. And I don't mean a cross-functional team within HR. We are here. We love people, and that's why we chose these careers. But let's make sure when you build a D&I team in your organization, it just does not have executive sponsors. It has people across different roles. It has the most techie people, the most cynical people on this subject into the core teams. That's how you will build the true culture sustainably.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shraddha. And I'm going to go to measures and metrics in a minute. And I'm going to invite Karin to share that. But you've given us these 5 barriers, and you've covered a lot of it from business to the experience of the day-to-day managers to not understanding really what is the problem we're trying to solve and give a context, to also make that diversity agenda a cross-functional one. Anything else to add, Maria or Karin? Any other barriers that you have experienced that you want to bring into the bucket?
I would add to this that it's not a topic which only women should address and should take initiative. We need absolutely to invite men at the table, and I think we will talk about this further, because we tend to launch projects and initiative where women are addressing and we're talking about their challenges and how to find solutions and take actions. But men are not always invited. So I believe this is one of the barriers we have to address and talk today.
Wonderful. Thanks, Karin, for adding that into the cross-functionality, not only functional, but also, in different ways as well. So I'm staying with you, Karin. Shraddha mentioned about measurement and our ability to identify those lead indicators and not just the lag indicators, right? At the end of the year, whatever is the report card, but what are the things that we could have probably tracked early so we know directionally we're going on the right track? What would those be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I fully agree with you, Shraddha, when it comes to tracking, monitoring, and it's not at the end of the year that we look at diversity metrics, but it's ongoing progress we have to make. So I would say, in a summary, diversity should be embedded in the whole talent management cycle, from recruitment and selections at the very beginning, through development, promotion, to succession plan. And also, obviously, retention and engagement are absolutely key metrics. So let's start with female representation at the top, for example. So setting targets for female representation. So setting expectation that external hire shortlist should be 50-50 men, women. So just to give you an example, at the moment, I'm working on a few key recruitment for critical positions. And I'm very clear with all my leaders, I want to see women in the shortlist. So we have to look at, obviously, the competency and the skills and aspiration, but we need to see more women from the very beginning of the recruitment process. So looking more at the overall strengths and diversity of the senior team and hiring in the context of that. The other one is ensuring that successors for senior roles or even first management level are 50-50 men, women. At Manpower Group, we have a very clear objective of achieving 40% of women in the leadership by 2024. I'm pretty sure that all organizations have set goals. How do we achieve this? And obviously, it's very challenging given as well the year we had last year. But if we don't set very clear goals, we won't achieve them. Hypo program as well, make sure that there are gender balance, having clear expectations around the number of women to be promoted to management positions. So I'll give you another example with Japan. And as you can imagine, Japan is one of the countries where it's most challenging, bringing more diversity and more women in management and leadership roles. We have promoted 50% of female in 2019. So 50% of the promotion were women, which is incredible. After, we need to make sure we retain them. And that's what I'm tracking, the percentage of women managers and leaders, which is progressing very slowly, but steady. I would add to this that setting diversity targets and goals is difficult, and it needs to be done really with cautious. The goals should be ambitious enough to encourage efforts and commitment, but they need to be as well realistic. Realistic enough. Otherwise, people will say, okay, I can't achieve this. And again, my discussion with Japan at the moment is, can I achieve this goal? And I would add to this, first, it's equally important to assign responsibility and establish accountability. So once target and goal are set, responsibility for the achievement should be assigned to individuals who are held accountable through scorecards, for example. So I'm working on this at the moment. So for every leader, we have very clear KPIs around people and culture, talent pipeline, female in their leadership. So that's one. Track and analyze results. As I said, it's important to have a formal plan, but to measure and who is calculating this and how often. And result of diversity effort should be transparent. So my opinion is we need to communicate very honestly about what we want to achieve this. this fosters trust and encourages accountability. Finally, yeah, as we said, review metrics regularly is key. And I would add to this, metrics alone won't shift the needle. I think we need to create a culture of conscious inclusion and, again, being very transparent on what we want to achieve.
Wonderful. Thanks, Karin. And I know, Shraddha, you have something to add on the metrics. But for many of us who will be listening to you, it does feel like it is a big, giant elephant that we really are moving. And I love the fact that you broke it down into smaller pieces, and how what it means to each one of you is really, again, as Shraddha was saying, what's your context and where do you start, right? But I think it's the beautiful multi-dimensional approach that you've just shown us, that you can't just look at one process. It's really about what can we do across all these different processes that creates a touch point and an opportunity to move it. And I really loved your point about accountability. And I can sense the pain when you were sharing that story, but it is going to be a shift that will require that sustainable energy to keep up with those barriers. So thank you for sharing that, Karin. Shraddha, anything to add before we move to the second section? And there are a couple of questions that have come that I want to take now, but before invite you to add on the...
What Karin said, and she covered a lot, right? The entire employee cycle. If I just take an example of hiring, now I know a lot of people complain saying there are not enough women in the workforce. Okay, great. They're not going to come overnight, right? That's not going to change from a Friday to Monday. But I'm asking you to look at three things. One is go back to your own job descriptions. If you put a job description which says you require 20 years of experience, 10 years in an oil mine field, and 10 years of consulting in that experience, 20 years ago, there was no women in an oil field. So no matter how, you have to really rethink the way you require skills for a job. And I think it's time to drastically change that. The second one on the hiring is we talk about shortlists. One thing I urge people to do is you should have gender balance in your panel as well, because that's a huge reflection of that being an important criteria of a balanced view of decision making in an organization. So go back, have a look at, you may need to look at hiring from different universities, different profiles of people, if you want something to come in which is not available otherwise. So be open to that design. The one that Karen also spoke about was, I want to touch upon pay parity, right? So this is a big topic. We speak about it. I'm asking questions saying that as an organization, have you made your pay ranges transparent? If you have not, have your manager started, cognizantly touching upon this, ensuring the employee understands, both men and women understand that the pay ranges are set and everybody is being, paid fairly. Also, importantly, a lot of times we within HR do the audit at the end of the exercise. And that's too late by then. As an organization, have you built systems in place that allow you to see how it is moving? So at SAP, that's one of the biggest investments we made. So I and my team can see it when the managers are planning. And it's an entire way where you can get in and ask important questions so that you don't come back at an audit where somebody has been paid 30% lesser because she was on her eligible maternity leave. So, this is how you can use technology. So I'm really like Karen's given a lot of examples. I'm saying, Take that process, go a little bit deeper, really get down into what can change as metrics.
Wonderful. Thank you for adding that, because it's just not about the metrics, but as you said, is what is under that process, right? Otherwise, you're just tracking metrics, but, and you're wondering why they're not moving. But you're absolutely right. If your job descriptions are not inclusive, if your process is not inclusive, then tracking metrics is like, checking your weight every day and then have a chocolate cake. And then you're wondering, why is my weight not changing? Anyway, sorry for the joke. So Maria, I'm going to come to you in a minute. There was a question specifically, and you covered about Me Too movement. And the question was from one of our listeners, Chumki Chopra, saying that this Me Too movement has maybe accelerated potentially a disbalance where there are more companies more worried or more scared. So has it have a negative effect into what we actually aspire to do? And what, his reflection is we're seeing companies actually wanting to hire less women. Is that your experience?
I think that the great point about the Me Too movement is we are starting to acknowledge the reality. And this is very important, that voices raise and say, this happened. And we do not want it to happen again. We don't want this to be the rule in a working place. And the fact that the Me Too movement started in the film industry is very relevant, because women that have the power to say that, because they have visibility, because they are rich, they are empowered, they have the attention of the media, this gave a very loud speaker to them, and it really brought many women together, and men also, saying, okay, enough is enough. We need to have a thought on that. And I think that there's nothing wrong in bringing issues into the table and saying, okay, let's all together talk about this and see what is in our hands to do to solve this problem, this issue. So in Shraddha's and Karin's interventions, and what we're talking about is more transparency, more neutrality. We need to acknowledge the fact that work is work, a job is a job. We need to fit everyone in there, because it's not that men have some capacities that women lack, is that culturally we've been specializing in different fields. So women were in the caring system at home with kids and food and the elder and things like that. And men went and worked and brought money in the household. Maybe that worked in some times in the past. What we are telling now is we want a different future. And I think that all the crises that we're going through, and that is really talking about this, what I said previously, the overall balance is telling us we need different views. We need different ways of thinking. We need to have these important conversations, and we need to set these balanced goals and share them as common goals. So I think that the Me Too movement, it may be scary, but only for those who really did something wrong. So maybe it's time to think about it. Maybe it's time to say sorry. Maybe it's time to say or to recognize we all were victims of a cultural system, and that we agree on the fact that we need a different one to really progress as humanity. That's my view.
Thank you, Maria. And I'm going to stay with you, but before we are midway the conversation, and I can't even believe that we've covered already so much. And thank you so much for your comments. And I can see some comments, some questions. I'm going to come to them as they fit. We're now going to move to the fish tank, and we're going to go a little deeper and say, okay, what is it that we can do to make this fish tank, which is the organizational metaphor, more inclusive? And Maria, we're going to start with your reflection on the men. Then I'm going to come to you, Shraddha. What is it that we can do about the woman? And Karin, you will give us an overview on the ecosystem. But I would like to invite Karin first to share a little bit about how this pandemic as a context has changed this fish tank. What has changed in the fish tank because of the pandemic? And then we'll go to the different parts one by one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you just mentioned, Maria, was interesting to hear you about we need different views. We need to more discussion. And if I look at obviously we need to consider the pandemic impact. We've been through a year, and we go through another year, and I think the workplace is just changing, and that's for sure. So the pandemic has created more complexity, but also I feel lots of opportunity to look at the workplace differently and to look at diversity differently. First, it's about resetting norms around flexibility. I think all organizations are looking at this agile workplace, agile framework, and we're working on this as well in our organization. So COVID has made it much harder for employees to draw clear lines between work and home, and companies should look for ways to reestablish work-life boundaries. And this would help women to feel much more comfortable in juggling between home and work and increasing their engagement and productivity. The other thing I would add is adjusting policies and programs to better support employees. So companies should make sure employees are aware of the full range of benefits available to them. And obviously, it's not only to women, but I think a lot of women can benefit more about this support around mental health, for example, counseling, and again, juggling between home and work. And finally, I would add make work more sustainable. And we'll talk a lot at the moment around sustainability, ESG. This is a topic that comes to every company. And in the last 2-3 months, I've seen this very strong in our organization. So a sustainable pace at work is absolutely essential to help mothers, senior level women, and all employees facing, like, for example, burnout to get through the crisis. So to make this happen, we need to look at productivity and performance expectations set before COVID quite differently. Is it still realistic? So the topic around productivity performance is absolutely critical. And again, how does this fit with diversity and women, and how we could help and encourage women to, if we look at this, to feel stronger and more comfortable in this environment.
Wonderful. And I'm going to come to you with some of maybe practical ways that we can overcome that. But Maria, let's start with the men. And Shraddha was talking about the linchpin being actually that people manager, or that, manager of managers. And the reality is that many of those are men in our organizations. So what is it that we can do to bring the men as agents of change in this journey?
I think that the main point is to tell men that they are also allowed to be complete human beings. So it is not the fact that this is a men's issue, a women's issue. This is an issue for all of us. So that's the first thing to acknowledge. But then they need to acknowledge and take the responsibility on the fact that this is not about they are the workmen, bread providers for their households, but they are also caregivers. So embrace this other side of your personality and add more things to your work in terms of conscience of everything that's left to do to achieve this equality that we want, or these gender balanced organizations. And I think this needs to be taught. I mean, this is a cultural shift, in fact, and we need to acknowledge that, and we need to just rethink the way in which we connect to each other, in which we manage, in which we lead, in everything. So it's getting rid of old ideas of what it meant to be a manager, old ideas of what it meant to work. And if you are in an organization, as we said previously, that is in the middle of this global shift, you need to be aware of that. You need to understand it, and you need to see that the future is about having different conversations, introducing the social goals into the activity of what we do, and enriching this activity. So men have to go through this journey and have to allow themselves to rethink on their position in life at the end. I have always thought that one of the most feminist leaders that we know is Obama. So President Obama is a man, and he's not less than a man because he has his feminine side. I think these attributes that we have always given to women as opposed to men, the yin and the yang, and it's all over any person, and starting from the point that it's not a binary system of gender. We're saying that. So every human being has all of these dimensions. And I think this is something that we need to embrace, as I said.
So anything to add before we go and focus on our woman population? Anything to add on the men, Shraddha? And I can see you nodding. So inviting your comments, and then I will stay with you anyway on the woman. So please carry on.
So I think that's a lovely point Maria brought up, right? We have held men to a very different standard as well. So it's not just, and there's something that we can do organizationally. And I'll give you classical examples. And this is an anecdote that goes back. I remember both the husband and wife were working with us, and the husband wanted to take a break, wanted to do a startup. He was so shit scared of telling this to his wife because it is unacceptable that my husband's sitting at home. Right? And I'm talking almost a decade ago, there wasn't so much of a startup culture. There wasn't this acceptance. Just the fact that your bread earner is not going to get the bread home, right? The wife was earning all same as the husband, but just the social bit of my husband not working was not acceptable. I remember I saw him in the car parking area, and he had tears in his eyes, and he was struggling. And I knew him for a very long time, so he chatted with me, and then we found a way. But I'm telling you, we hold men to that standard as well, and we have to be sensitive. So I'm urging organizations to think about benefits gender neutrally. Maybe you cannot give 6 months of maternity breaks, but what we did paternity leave for 4 weeks, paid paternity leave for all our male employees. And we also realized that, we normally thought that they would take it at the right beginning, right? The day the baby is born, that period of time. And then you realize from the wives and the mother-in-laws and the mothers saying that we don't want the man around because this is the chaos at any point in time, right? If you have a small baby. And then the husbands also felt really odd. They said, they don't want me at home, and hence I'm back at office in the second week. Then we got smarter and we said, you can take 4 weeks in the first year of the child's birth and do it ideally when the woman is coming back to work. So we learned in that process as well. And that's my point. I think men are held to standards as well, which they don't want to be. So let's humanize, our expectations of both genders to make it work. That's my thing on the,
Thank you so much, Shraddha. Thank you for adding that. And I'm staying with you on the woman side. And I think Karin mentioned, and I'm picking up Surajban's question. His question specifically is about effective retention. And Karin talked about high potentials, promotion, hiring. All that is going to go for a toss if we're not able to actually retain, that advancements that we've done. Yeah. So I'm going to invite you to take Surajban's question and also what you were going to share and kind of try to merge it a little bit with the outcome being retention and development.
Sure. So happy to share again. I'd like to, get some structure around. So I'll share four processes, right? The first one, I think that there's a lot that is spoken and done about women coming back to work, right? I'm very glad and happy about it. I think a lot of companies have programs, they make that additional effort. They have maybe start at 50%, 60%. You have that happening. But I'll give you another example, which was a hard learning for us. In the range of, from an India context perspective, between 23 to 27, 28, this is where women are making partner choices. This is where they're getting married. Now, societally, you also have to be cognizant. A lot of people go back, live with their in-laws, etc., etc. It's a fundamental shift, but one that we don't speak and acknowledge in a corporate world as much. So one of the things, over and above the back to work program, we did a lot in the retention space, and that was clearly something we had to fix, right? The first kid, people still came back. The second kid, if you didn't have a childcare center or a support system, women, it was a struggle. So we fixed those. And answering Suraj's question, we fixed those. But we realized this was one area in the 23, 27, so much change for a woman. It took a hit on her self-confidence. It took her hit on the value system, because now you're suddenly supposed to go stay with somebody else. You're supposed to fit into a life. And it was impacting performance, but people are unable to talk about it because it's not a public, like maternity is something very obvious, right? You go on leave, you come back. This is not something that was happening. So we did a specific program. We actually got behavioral scientists to come and talk to our women in this category. And they called out what are the 3 things that they need support on. And we built a program. It's called Headway. for our employees in this segment. And the way the confidence and the personality emerged out of it was heartwarming to see. So, giving you an example of, there may be other pockets that you're completely missing out when you're thinking about retaining women and developing women. That's one. Second one that I'd like to definitely share is a gamified approach. Now, gamification is very well spoken about. One of the challenges, and there are some hard realities, I'm going to say it out there, right? You like it or you don't. Women have a different style of leadership. And I'll give you a classical example. Women hate office politics. Not that men don't hate. Women hate it to an extent that they are okay to take a cost on their career about it. They're very matter of fact. They're like, I don't want to get in here, right? And office politics exists everywhere. My 2 cents there is very simple. There's no right and wrong answer. But you need to be smart that you may decide not to play office politics, but you shouldn't be played. And how do you create that awareness? So we did something called a gamified approach. It's called Snakes and Ladders. It's like a standard Snakes and Ladders we have all grown up with. It's just what we had is we had a case, a small 4-line case at every stand. And there were 4 options. 2 that would make the person go forward, 2 that would make the person go backward. And they were all mixed, right? We would put women in groups and they would debate, no, this is morally not right, this and that. And then you had a leader come back and say, I've done this and I have done this. So there's no right and wrong. Just to neutralize what women feel, I think you have to get those conversations up there, right? A lot of women believe my work's going to talk to me, so I don't need to make noise about my work. That doesn't happen. Now look at a manager who has a man and a woman. The man's talking about his work because that's what he's taught to. The woman is not talking. Now, you have to be fair to the manager. So you have to look at interventions across organizations to be designed differently, right? Another one I want to highlight is we expect women to take up leadership roles, right? Karen spoke about it. And we push them, we put them into programs, but it's too big a jump. Please understand, and across the globe, I've met many women who tell me that if there were balls in the air and one ball was family and one ball was work, I cannot let the family down. And it's not an Indian woman, it could be women anywhere in the globe, right? That's somehow a conscience we grew up with. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, and I'm nobody to say that. But you have to understand that you have to give women smaller steps. So one of the things we realized is even when we, develop them, put them, they wouldn't apply to leadership roles because they think they're not ready. Because they're not 100% ready. So we had to really go out there and tell them, we don't expect you to be 100% ready. You don't even have to be 80% ready, which makes them very nervous. So we started giving them very, very small visibility and opportunities. Then they got confident. So you have to do 10 steps for women to start taking the leadership role. If you expect them to happen because you made this awesome program, it's not happening. And that's a hard cut learning. And we had to get men as sponsors. Sometimes a man will just go out there and saying, I'd love to have a conversation, but to me, this is a 30-second topic. What is the problem? What's the solution? And if that's the boss or that's the leader, you have to learn to develop that style. So we did a lot of cross-gender mentorship where really senior managers and leaders across the organization took ownership for women's careers. And that's where we saw the needle move.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Shraddha. And a lot of examples that you've shared, and I can see a lot of them are resonating with our listeners. And I'm going to just add one more comment on the promotion readiness and that confidence gap that we know differentiates sometimes women and men in the workplace. And there was one example that I heard about a woman going through a process of selection and actually not going through because she wasn't actually ready enough. But the fact that she was given feedback and say that, listen, if you aspire for these kind of roles, these kind of experiences are needed. So why don't you pick up this project? Why don't you pick up that project? So just the fact that the person had the courage to go through that promotion did not lead to the promotion, but it led to a visibility and it led to some very practical next steps that meant that person actually was ready in 6 months later. So it's just that constructive, not only the confidence, but the feedback and the opportunities that you will get. And then you're also visible. That person suddenly was visible to, the next level of whoever was doing the promotion. So just to add that one more example, Shraddha, into your question. So I'm going to go, Karen, to your ecosystem now. And a lot of it has been covered. I think Maria has given us some ecosystem inputs. Shraddha has given us some ecosystem inputs. And at the end of the day, many of leaders in this conversation are either, heads of HR, business leaders. Now you need to look at that in a holistic way, and you need to make that across the board and sustainable. So what is your experience on how do we make this fish tank more inclusive? And you've covered that a little bit, but just kind of try to help us summarize a little bit on, how do we take it forward at the ecosystem level?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to talk about culture here, and the culture of conscious inclusion, what we call so in order to foster accountability and encourage action. So I think both make people accountable, where we need action and we need to see things happening. We need to create this culture of what I would call conscious inclusion. So where everyone is welcomed and all opinions are valued. We talked earlier about sharing views, different perspectives. So we want the employees to understand that their own biases and the impact on those around them to do the best work. So I would say there are different steps to achieve this. And first, change yourself first. So the change must be authentic and start with us. We had this, I think, discussion about authenticity, transparency, and fairness. Then we talk about as well leadership, and leadership has to own it. So the CEO and the leadership needs to own the issue. However, I think, Chanda, you mentioned this, how we do cascade down to middle management, to that level, which is absolutely critical. Because if it stayed at the top, things would not happen. So it needs to be obviously aligned to the business strategy, and we need to make sure that it cascades down from the top down. Interestingly as well, I will talk about how to flip the question asked, why not? For example, succession planning must be bolder. Instead of saying, oh, she doesn't have the experience, what do we need to make this happen? What do we need to make this work? So really flipping the question and make it work.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, we'll come back to the why at the start of this conversation.
Absolutely.
And another step is hire people who value people. So we hire people who will figure out how to optimize the human potential, including women. So we need to support people to plan and manage for career webs and not necessarily ladder. As we talked just before about promoting women. It's not only up. We have to look at the career path and all possibility to promote and develop women laterally. Promoting this culture of conscious inclusion. And again, I will talk about accountability that sits with all leaders in the organization and decision maker to promote this culture. Another point would be to be absolutely explicit. It's not because only simply increasing female representation will not shift the needle. Women and men, as we said, must be represented at all levels in every business unit. And finally, I would say, and we cover this, is setting achievable and measurable outcome. We need absolutely to have objective at some point, otherwise things will not happen. And maybe just to give two other example, how to reorganize structure and system to create a truly diverse workplace. So rigorous training of the staff in a careful and considerate manner, where there is a kind of acknowledgement that these hidden biases are bound to exist is important. So audit, survey of current and previous employees, focus group are very helpful. Where the discussion is framed around, obviously, fairness and inclusivity. So we need to continue doing this survey, doing audit and tracking and understanding what is happening in the organization. And in addition, I would maybe finish on this point, create collaborative project and program. We talk about sponsor. I would add to this mentoring. I'm a big fan of mentoring program. It doesn't have to be woman mentoring women. It could be mixed. It has to be mixed at some point, so that really men understanding and see the potential and help women to grow within the organization. So, and again, when we talk about project and involving women, we tend to cluster a bit women into functional role like HR, marketing. What about women in P&L management? And I've seen just a question, I think, in the chat as well. When we talk about industry, manufacturing, IT roles, although we've made some progress, but how can we encourage women, to develop and to be in this type of industry or in this type of role? And again, business leader, not only functional.
Wonderful. Thanks, Karin. And I could see Maria and Shraddha nodding. I'm nodding as well. And I'm seeing all of you, and we can't see you, but I'm sure many of you are also nodding at hearing the three of our panelists today. And it's been just so much of depth. And there is a lot of questions, but I'm going to try to take some of the essence. And Karin, you've mentioned about industries that are, starting at a much more challenging place, let's put it that way. And some work environments, Danielle is talking about, how do we even start when this conversation is not even on the table? We're here talking about how do we move the needle. And there are organizations listening to us who actually believe that the needle is not even in discussion. So what will be your advice for organizations that are just at a very, very early stage? But they shouldn't take as long as we are taking, right? So what will be your word of advice for those sectors or those organizations that are maybe just way behind? How do we leapfrog them much faster?
I can start. And
go ahead, Shraddha.
I will add on, right? If that's your true state, then start at the heart of it. Start to get leadership buy-in. Start with your top 2 to 3 leaders, and don't go the ROI way. Don't do that, because then it will take you 25 years to get anywhere. Go through design a personal experience for them where they feel the value of diversity and inclusion, right? Be it in terms of gender, be it in terms of any diversity that you want to go after, which is making the most sense. But it has to be literally a personal experience. So I'll give you a classical example. Sales is typically very male dominated, or has been. A lot of women who pick sales in your MBA days don't stay with that after 15 years. Right? This is the honest answer. You're seeing this turn, but it's still not as much. If you're quota carrying your P&L roles, you don't see that. For certain segments, and again, I'm not going to, of course, name the company, but everybody next 7 layers is only men. Nobody talks. Nobody thinks that it's odd, because that's all they have grown up seeing. And it's unfair for us to now suddenly expect them to have the sensitivity around it. So what started off is... and this is a conglomerate-owned company. The chairman, who's not the CEO, but the chairman tried to get somebody from his family. It's a family-run business, and put the girl out there. Now she was 25 in an all-male 55, and all she would do is ask questions, because she didn't understand that. Now, obviously, they couldn't be rude to her. I'm making you laugh because I'm giving you a humorous side, but all she did is like, why are you thinking like this? Like, this is not required. Today technology lets you do. Over a period of time, of course, there was, in the initial resistance, but people started saying, oh, she says something, it's going to make my life easier, right? And then the manager, and this is something they're very fond, the old man made them go out together. Now, of course, she had the protection because she was from the owner's family, so she was treated well. But, people started seeing her perspective, started valuing, and started building one-on-one connections. And then over a period of time, she got into a P&L role. And today she actually leads one of the largest organizations, one of the largest portfolios of that conglomerate company. It's a 12-year journey she's been on. But I can tell you, there was a point in time, there were only men in that room. And it wasn't odd for them. I think you have to figure a way of doing it. There's some ways where you can park a few experiences, but start with making inclusion personal for your key leaders. Once it's personal and once they see value, they will create the momentum across the organization. But as HR, one other thing you could do is really question, and Karin really beautifully put it, how you look at different parts of the employee life cycle. Right? Don't go bite the biggest chunk. probably you want to go start with the millennial hiring or the early talent hiring, because that's the pool that's available on gender balance, if that's your problem. Don't go after head hunting, -1, a board -1 positions, because you don't have the acceptance in the organization. So really break the cake into smaller pieces for you to truly go through that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shraddha. And I think in a way you've already given us your start and stop. I'm just conscious about time as well. So start by making it personal. If you want anybody in your organization to change his or her viewpoint, make it personal, and stop maybe with very big aspirations and goals, and start with the low-hanging fruits. So Karine and Maria, one star, one stop as we conclude today's conversation that you want to leave with everyone today. Go ahead,
So
Karine.
I will start then. And
You start.
And I'll start with looking at diversity and inclusion as a key component of your corporate culture. And yeah, developing an inclusive mindset. That's the start. And stop thinking that this issue has to be addressed only with women. Men need to be in these conversations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Karine. Maria, your start and stop.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I was
no
muted.
problem.
I think that we've said a lot, and I would like to say language is very important. We build reality through language, so let's speak gender balance. So let's go for this neutrality. This will add a lot to this conversation. And we are now in a moment where work is changing. Karine said that, Shraddha also. We are building different teams with a working experience. So I think another important thing is to break silos within organizations, make everyone work through projects from different areas, and make leadership something that can be rotative, that can change, so that someone will be leading a project because it's focused on their areas, but need the outcomes of other ones. And this will add to different ways of getting things done. So, and another point, sorry, I'm longer than what you asked.
Last point,
Last
Maria.
point is promote people that are gender diverse aware, that have been leading gender diverse roles, move them up, and they bring this culture with them, so they will make things change a bit faster.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maria. And it's been an amazing hour. I personally have learned a lot. I personally have enjoyed hearing your examples, your authenticity, and how committed the three of you are on this topic. And it's just been amazing. And it would not be fair for me to even summarize. So I'm going to invite our audience to summarize it for us. So just think about one thing that really stood up for you. And think about one action that you want to take. So I'm inviting you to just reflect for a minute and say, what is the one thing that really stood up for me? And what's the one action I take from this conversation? And you can post it on the comments. And that's also a gift for Karine and Maria and Shraddha on how they have impacted us in this 1 hour. So looking forward to seeing those comments as they come. Very big gratitude, Karine, Maria, Shraddha, for being with us. I know it's a very busy week. All of you guys are going to have, it's a very busy life, but it's a very busy week as well, because this is an important portfolio. And you taking your time has really made a difference. So I want to thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Esther, for inviting. We had good fun. I had good fun. I had a lot of learnings. And I hope our audience takes something back. So really happy to have been a part of this panel.
Wonderful.
Me
Karine,
too.
Maria, closing?
I learned a lot also from you, and it's exciting to see that there's so many people around the globe just leading these conversations and making change happen. So thanks, and very happy to have joined.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Maria.
thank you so
Karine.
much. And it was great to see a lot of men joining this panel discussion. So looking forward to the next one. Thank you so much.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. So we are also looking forward to the next one. And I have a big announcement to share with you. And Karine and Shraddha don't know yet. But we've been working on a new program that is going to really look at these fish tanks. So we are launching a certification program for leaders who want to change the processes, which we call it leveling the workplace. So it's going to be a 4-week course for HR, business, manager of manager level, who really potentially have the accountability to make those changes. And we're also launching 2 programs. One is specifically for men, as Maria was saying, helping men be full human beings. And we are also launching a program for women. And I have the privilege to have Maria supporting us in that project. So big gratitude, Maria, for your help. And I'm going to be reaching out to Karin and Shraddha to be part of our programs as well, and requesting the People Matters team to just ping the brochure in case you're interested, you want your organization to be part of this journey that we are starting. We'll be very, very happy to invite you to be part of it. So thank you so much once again, and have a wonderful evening and a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful rest of the day, and a very good weekend as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.